Everton have indeed sacked Frank Lampard. We're going to get immediate reaction to that, but it's as we were all expecting today because of what happened at the weekend. Of course, he had a meeting with Farhad Moshiri and his future wasn't assured, he said in that meeting. But as you saw at the weekend, after that defeat to West Ham, it was likely to be the last straw. They've really suffered, haven't they, this season so far? Just the 3 victories in the Premier League, and it's left them 19th in the table at the moment. So the bad news for Frank Lampard is that he has taken the hit for their position in the table. Almost 2 weeks, of course, to their next Premier League game as well, which gives them a little bit time to see who they will get in through the door. We have all sorts of names are in the hat at the moment. In terms of the bookies, Marcelo Bielsa is top of the bookies list at the moment to take over from Frank Lampard. We're going to get some more on this story as it develops. But as I can tell you, their next Premier League game doesn't get any easier, does it? It's Arsenal. And that's at Goodison Park on February the 4th. And then it is the Merseyside derby, and that is at Anfield. After that, they face Leeds. They've got Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, Brentford, and then Chelsea. So plenty coming their way in terms of games in the Premier League. Remember, they were knocked out of the EFL Cup. That was by Bournemouth. They were knocked out of the FA Cup by Manchester United. Since, of course, Ancelotti left in the summer of 2021, it was Rafa Benitez who took charge. And then after Benitez came Frank Lampard. He was given the role on January the 31st. And he has kept the role for less than a year. So the big news breaking is that Everton have indeed sacked Frank Lampard. And we will get some reaction to that news throughout the day here on Sky Sports News. These are his last 8 games in charge. You see there, it makes for dismal reading at the moment in the Premier League. West Ham away, of course, the game at the weekend, that was a 2-0 defeat, and then Southampton, they lost that one as well, 2-1. Against Brighton, it was no better, 4-1 defeat there. Manchester City, they got that draw as things were looking up at that stage, but before that it was Wolves, Bournemouth and Leicester where they picked up defeats as well, and that draw against Fulham a while ago now, a 0-0 draw there. So these are his times in charge. As I said, at the moment, 3 wins in the Premier League. He's drawn 6, lost 11. They've scored 15. They conceded 28 goals. And as I said, 15 points on the board. So 44 games in charge, and he's only won 12 of them as their manager. Let's get more on this. As I said, Vinny O'Connor is waiting there at the training ground. So they have indeed sacked him, Vinny.
Yeah, certainly our understanding at the moment, Vicky. Obviously, Everton still to confirm for definite that Frank Lampard has been sacked, but it is our understanding that he has been relieved of his duties as the Everton manager. It's the information that we had earlier today and have been reporting throughout the day, really. And it's just been a case of results ultimately deciding Frank Lampard's fate. The fact as well, you spoke about the stats throughout his time here in charge, Vicky, but on top of that, of course, there were painful defeats at home to the likes of Wolverhampton Wanderers, Southampton as well, both strugglers, fellow strugglers in and around Everton in the Premier League table at the moment, and the fact that they weren't able to get maximum points from those games really set alarm bells ringing at the football club, continuing that desperate run of form. I keep going back to the game against Crystal Palace in October, which was highlighted as a real blueprint for the way Everton want to play moving forward, but they've not been able to repeat that kind of form since then. The one bright spot really has been, again, I reiterate, that equaliser from Demarai Gray against Manchester City at the Etihad, but again, not able to follow that up. And you look at the desperate performance in the defeat to Brighton at Goodison Park, conceding 4 goals on that occasion, but the fact that maybe changes weren't made at half-time when Everton was struggling defensively down their right-hand side, and at times he's gone with a 4-3-3 at Goodison Park that hasn't quite worked, when 3 at the back worked at the Etihad, but then subsequently didn't work at West Ham United at the weekend. So it's just been a desperate situation all round. I think the fans look at the situation and they say that Frank Lampard isn't entirely to blame for the situation Everton found themselves in. We go back to recruitment over a prolonged period of time. now since Farhad Moshiri. The money spent over £500 million, of course, and yet still Everton not getting a return on that investment in terms of the quality within that squad. Richarlison sold in the summer, and in terms of the productivity of the replacements, it's not been at the level that Richarlison showed, certainly through that relegation battle. Frank Lampard came in, and there's a lot of respect for him from the Evertonians. There's a lot of respect for him from the media here on Merseyside as well, because of the way he has dealt with us, the way he dealt with things within the club, and of course the fact that they were successful ultimately in beating relegation last season. We all remember the atmosphere at Goodison Park in that famous comeback against Crystal Palace in their final home game of last season. But at the same time, Everton have not been able to build on that. They find themselves in another relegation battle once again. And I think ultimately, while the board are unanimous in their decision to relieve Frank Lampard of his duties, I think most of the fans would also say a change needed to be made to give Everton the best opportunity to stay in the Premier League again this season.
Yeah, Vinny, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, like you say, Frank Lampard comes across as such a nice manager. Maybe that's not what Everton needed right now. They needed somebody that was really tough. In terms of going forward, because it always has to happen, somebody will have to step in here. They have got this kind of 2-week hiatus before their next game. It's, of course, against Arsenal. It doesn't get any tougher, does it? Who's likely to come in through the door? Who do you think might be the next Everton manager?
Well, I don't even see it as having 2 weeks, Vicky, to be honest, because we're still in the middle of a transfer window and Everton desperately need reinforcements. Dan Juma, we know, is happening, and that should be confirmed in the next 24 hours. And the irony there is, and people will say it's the most Everton thing ever, once again, Frank Lampard has been crying out for attacking reinforcements that could well have put him in a position to save his job and reaffirm his future at the football club. And yet he's played a part in Dan Juma's arrival here at Everton, yet he's not going to even get the opportunity to play him in one of his Everton side because he's been sacked as the Everton manager. Dan Juma will still join the football club. We believe there was a slight hold up over that as he looked for reassurances, I suppose, over the direction the club was moving in with regards to the manager, but he's more than happy now to finalise that deal. As I say, we're expecting that to come within the next 24 hours. What is definite with regards to the managership, it's a massive decision facing Everton's board. I keep saying it year after year. Don't forget, this is a year and 7 days since Rafa Benitez lost his job as the Everton manager. But there is a massive disconnect between the boardroom and the Everton fan base at the moment. And Evertonians just need to see a glimmer, something tangible that is going to give them hope that there is a plan to take this football club forward, that recruitment is going to be got right, and they're going to start seeing those kind of results on the pitch. It's not going to be a quick fix. In some ways, they need someone to come in and give it a quick fix and give it that managerial boost that will see them picking up the points that can pull them away from the drop zone. But they're also looking for longevity as well, and that forward kind of plan that shows that there is a plan in place that can see this football club progress, because these Everton fans have been hurting for too long. They've been promised so much, and in terms of results on the pitch, little has been delivered. Absolutely,
Vinny. And we've seen the banners. Is there any indication, I don't know whether you'll know any of this, but could any of the board members follow suit and go with Frank Lampard? Or will it just be Frank Lampard, do you think?
I think at the moment it would just be Frank Lampard. Certainly that's the impression we get. The fact that a decision has been taken, we get those words, unanimous board decision as well. I could be proved wrong in that, but at the minute, you get the impression that the board want to make a decision. They're looking at managerial candidates to come in now as well. Again, that decision will be taken amongst them. Kevin Thewell, the director of football, effectively coming up with a short list of potential candidates. And again, that decision will be taken as a whole. Farhad Moshiri, he spoke to Gary Cottrell after that defeat to West Ham, and it caused a little bit of confusion, in all honesty, in how he replied to Gary's question about Frank Lampard's future by saying it wasn't his decision. And it seemed at the time that he was maybe abdicating responsibility in that respect. But our understanding since then, listening to a few of the explanations, is that it's what he was referring to is it's not just his decision, it's the board's decision. So at the moment, that boardroom remains the same and remains in place. Whether that will make Evertonians happy, you get the impression not, because as you say, Vicky, we've seen the banners, we know about the protests, we know what's been sung towards the board members, and ultimately Everton fans hold the boardroom responsible for the state that the club finds itself in at the moment, because they presided over a period of time the buck stops with the owner, of course. But the fact is, a lot of money has been spent, and again, I repeat that not a lot has been delivered for that investment. So I suppose, in essence, they want to see at some point that lessons have been learned from the mistakes made in the past. Whether they're going to give the board members that extra time, I get the impression not. And so it all comes down to, I suppose, in terms of building relationships now between the two areas, if they want to remain in place, they've got to get this appointment right and find some way to build bridges amongst the fan base. But it's a long road to recovery in that respect.
It is. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just in terms of Frank Lampard, where does he go next? You speak to him regularly. What do you think he's going to do? Will he lick his wounds for a while? He'll want to get back in the game, you'd think.
I would think so. You always came across as someone who's got that hunger, that ambition to succeed, and it was impressive the way he spoke, particularly when he first came in. The shame for Frank is that, and I look at the pictures from that defeat to West Ham at the weekend, and you saw, again, the measure of the man, I suppose, in that defeat was how he responded in terms of going up towards the Evertonians and showing his appreciation towards them as well, and also getting a number of the players to do likewise. His ambition is massive. He had massive ambitions for this football club as well. I suppose it's just a case of a learning process. This was a difficult job as well. And when you're still at the start of your managerial career, was it the right time for him to come to this club? Not necessarily one that he could ever have turned down, because on paper, I suppose, you see the fan base, you see the potential within that squad, you see the money that's been spent in the past on players, and you just look at some of the quality of the players within that squad as well. I mean, yeah, they're in a difficult position, but I think there's an argument to say that this group of players should be doing better than they are. And then maybe they need to look at themselves as well, because they've seen there's a fair few in that dressing room who have been through a number of managers now during the time that Farhad Moshiri has been in charge. But yeah, in terms of Frank Lampard, I think it's a case of taking a bit of time out now and then assessing his future, assessing what he needs to improve on as a manager. The fans, well, they appreciate the qualities that Frank Lampard brought to the football club in terms of being a unifying force last season. They will also point to where they feel he's made errors in terms of team selection or in terms of not changing things during a game when things have been going against his side. So I think there's lessons that can be learned, but I would hope that the fire, the ambition will return for Frank Lampard, and he will get another opportunity as well, because I go back to that performance against Crystal Palace this season. That filled everyone with a lot of excitement as to what the future was for Everton, because Frank Lampard spoke about it at the time. That was the blueprint for the way he wants the football club to play.